This is Kobe's first drive in the Viper, but not too far because he crashed my Saturn. You did. Might have been just the time to come on. Yeah. You know what's not very fun? Working on your car in Texas summers, especially when it just turned summer and the days are about 100 degrees each. There's no wind blowing. You know, if you've seen my garage, I've got a regular size car door, one in the back, and I got a 2-car door in the front. So when these are open, especially before anyone had moved in, we were one of the first, if not the first houses in this whole section right here on this side in 2013. And man, it was a wind tunnel. It felt great. You opened up those two and you just had wind for days, and it was great. Kept the thing cool. But now it's a nightmare to get out here and work on this car. But a guy at work's really motivated me. He has a GMC pickup, and he ended up that's the guy I went to the track with and that had such a poor showing. But every day he gets out and he works on his car. Every day he gets out when he gets home and he does something. So I've purposed that the same thing I'm going to do is what he was doing. Is I'm going to do a little bit every day to get to that point where I'm done. And I appreciated his stick-to-itiveness, as you might say. But that list, it's a long list, and I'm going to get it taken care of. And this thing will be right after that. So yeah, that's why you ain't gotten a Unichip update yet. My goal was, before I put Unichip on here and got that difference, I wanted to get like a baseline where it was at. Was not happy with that. So if it's going to come down, it's coming down, and when it comes up, it's right. So stay tuned for that. So in fairness, I wanted to show you what I actually ended up doing. So I had these. I ordered these, got them. These were too long. I intended to cut them to size. So I ended up using these pillow head ones. Or sorry, the flat ones. These are Allen heads. And then I cut them to size so they just barely protrude past this flange. And the reason why, seeing how they mount, if they were left to their size, it would hit this upper mount portion of it. So they're all cut down to size now. And it should never compress deeper than this up into here, because that's what's stopping it inside. There's that pillow ball, the bottom mount for it. So just to give you an idea what I ended up doing, I ended up washering them, and I'm considering this done. The cut on the bottom, you can see what I ended up doing. This is how it comes from Raceland, the slot this way. Well, you have to slide it this way up. And so all I did was I totally unscrewed this, put it on here, basically into this one, and then I paint matched or paint colored where I wanted to cut, so that I could have a pretty decent cut when it was done, and not just have this real god-awful just hack job. And so that's about as good as it gets. I did paint it. I did end up hacking off also. There is a brake hose tab over here as well. I hacked it off and painted it. And so that's pretty much it. This is going to be the rear. I got to assemble them, throw them on there. And of course, the reason I use these button heads is because look how high the one sticks up. When you go to set it up inside the strut tower, it's gonna sit flush to that top of the strut tower, so these bolt heads are going to hit. So by using these little cap bolts, it should fare better actually. So that's the reason I've changed over to them, just so you know. Alright, so seeing what I've done here, that piece I was talking about connects to the top of the adjuster, and you Allen wrench it on, and then it has a tube that extends out. My original plan was to cut the rear deck, that carpet enclosure, and have them poking up through there, but they're long and they'll be sticking up quite a ways. And I can just envision as I'm turning corners, aggressive driving, they're sitting there moving around like ant antennas. So I ended up coming up through here. Since no one's typically sitting in the back anyway, it's not going to bother me, but it's coming out of the seat belt receptacle thing there. So, but that's how they mount inside there. Comes up through there. I've already tested them. They turn super easy. For whatever reason, they include another 2 extra sets in here of this blue cap. So I don't know if over time maybe they get, these are also Allen head bolted on. Maybe back here they get kind of tight, and so this snaps or something, I don't know. But anyway, that's how that ends up mounting. All right, so these are ready to be put away in storage. I got a full set inside here. And of course, here's 2. I've got the other 2 upstairs. Depending on how well the front springs ride on this, because I've kept the front springs, the Raceland, and of course I put the heavier duty ones in the back, and I'll see how all that rides. It should ride the same. I'm going to have the setting, I'm going to mess with those settings in the back, and again, I'm not sure if it's going to make a difference or not. But if it does, I'll keep it at the softest setting if I like the way the compression is, because before we didn't have any kind of settings, firm or soft. So now we'll have it. But I like the way the thing rode before. I didn't have any problem with it. So if I got to put it to the softest setting and just rely on the spring to do its job, that's great in the back, as long as it doesn't burn up my fender flares. And in the front, if I find that it's too jarring up here, even if I put it on the soft setting, which I suspect it would, because remember, these are 500-pound rated springs. I think the stock Saturns are 200, or the Progress ones was 250 or something like that. Something like that. I have it written down in the literature, and I'll put it in this video right here as a footnote, because I'll have time to look it up then. But so I'll see how it rides up front. If it rides too rough, no matter the softest setting, then I'll go ahead and put these in there, which these are for the rear, and those are softer. These are like 300 pounds or something, the white ones. Or I may just go back with the Progress ones, so we'll see. But all that to say, depending on what I find after I do my ride and what I end up settling with, I may have as many as 2 sets of these Progress Group coilovers for sale, and I'll clean them up. And you know what, I'm not going to clean them up. You guys clean them up. But I'll end up sending them to whoever wants them, 2 different sets. Of course, I'm going to keep my strut mounts, so you'll need to buy some strut mounts for it. But outside of that, they still function. Of course, remember, I thought I initially had an issue with these things, but it ended up being that the inner bushing gave out, and I never knew it after I put those heavier springs in the back. And I had that noise. I thought the shocks themselves are done. So, but anyway, I'm going to have 2 sets. You buy them as is. They worked great for me before. Have no reason to believe them won't work great for you. They're heavy duty. These are steel bodied. And so, yeah. And these are made specifically for the Saturn, so you won't have to do any cutting, anything like that. They'll mount directly up to your top mounts. So I'll let you know in a future video whether or not I decide to get rid of them, how much. I mean, they're going to be probably... I mean, these new were about $1,000. So they're used, I'm thinking 300 plus shipping, 400, something like that. I'll let you know a final price when I decide to get rid of them. So just a little quick tidbit here. I've had a concern about this return line the whole time since it's been on here. It hangs down just too low. And of course, at a 90 degree, it's still just too low, even though you wouldn't think it's that too far down. But you can see it just goes straight back up until the subframe here, dips down. There's that check valve to keep the oil feed from flowing back into the turbine housing, to keep the the seals from getting overpowered and leaking into it and then burning the oil. So I need to find some way to correct this, or to make it a little bit better. And I kept trying to find ideas, and of course a banjo works, but you got to find the flange, the correct size, and stuff like this. So here's what I did. All the while trying to keep to a T4 housing, or a T4 flange. So this would fit, but this is a 6, an AN6, and the pump I have on here, the return pump, they want you to have at least an 8 on that side, and then you can go down on the other side. They don't so much care, but they want you to have at least an 8. And with this being a 6, and I looked and looked, and I didn't have any T4 oil drain flanges that had a big enough size on it with something that was low profile. So ended up buying a -8 T4 oil return. And what I did was I got a 1/2-inch bit, drilled the center section out, so now it's a 1/2 inch, and then I took this 14 by 1.5 tap and tapped the middle. Of course you can see it drilled out and tapped. And since it's a banjo fitting, the side that you put the gasket on, it needs to be relatively thin or flat. And so I'm just going to turn it over, use this side, and I'm going to hack off this 8 AN here. And it doesn't so much matter if I hack it off clean or not, because this side, matter of fact, it has to be obviously flat enough to seal on the bottom of the turbine housing, but that shouldn't be a problem at all. So of course this is the flange I'm going to use. I'm going to do it with one hand here. I've already obviously tapped it like I said. This screws in here like that. You got to put your washers on, obviously. This is just fitting it. So, and then when you got it on here, you can actually move it around and tighten it down to the direction you want, stuff like that. So at that point, I'll have that low profile I need, and then I'll just run that line up to this fitting here, which is -8, and everything should be hunky-dory. And of course this side will be the turbine side, so it should work out. So I used this to cut off the head of the 8AN as straight as I could, and then I used the die grinder, and I just really lightly supported the grinder and just watched the color changes on here to make sure, and just used my finger to pull along and make sure I'm flat. I feel just a little bit rise right here, so I'm gonna do a hair bit more, but everything else is flush with this. The key is not to get too deep into this. Now you do have the paper gasket to help offset some of the imperfections, but you don't want to have a bowl sitting there, because then you're not going to be able to seal it. So I'm going to do a little bit more right here, and then I'm done. All right, so you can see now it's got a much lower profile, and I had to swap out the 90 that was on there for one of those straights for the 8s there. So I got rid of the 90 here. So it drops it down straight over. All I had to do was mess with that line a little bit, and it's much lower profile. I feel much better about that. So it's all set. So I went ahead and wrapped the header and the downpipe. Couple reasons. One, to keep underhood temperatures even lower than what they are. Of course, that was the goal with the rear mount turbo deal. And then also keep the velocity of the gases as fast as they can be. And that's important with the rear mount turbo as well, for spool up and such. Next, of course, we're going to spray them with that black spray like we did the pipe underneath, to just, basically it's a coating, hardens it, kind of just helps keep the heat in just that much more. All right, so we got the coating, or I should say the exhaust wrap on. You can see the difference here in the way it looks. Right here it looks a little more shiny, and here it looks more dull. And that's just after, don't be surprised obviously when you get this stuff on here if it smokes pretty badly, because it's going to. It's you know, it's when you touched your pipe, It's the whole wrapping process, it's this wrap itself, and then of course it's the coating, it's the spray coating. But if I have to be honest, you know, I'm all good with the big bling bling stainless steel, whatever. And yes, you can get them thermal coated and stuff and still, I don't mind this look actually. This valve cover, I'm going to go ahead and get black crinkle powder coated. There's a company in Florida that another company that deals primarily with Hondas and such uses. I don't know the name, I'm gonna have to find it, but they do really good work, and they're always black crinkle coating valve covers for that LHT performance guy, and then red as well. I had originally envisioned this to be and it looks red, more red in this video than it actually does in person. It's real dark. So I had wanted a Honda red crinkle coat, but when I went down there, in the end, he said, oh, I got 1,000 colors to choose from. Well, in the end, he basically talked me into this, and I think that was because that's the colors that he had. But I didn't get what I wanted, and I was upset with myself that I let myself get talked into it. So in the end, after this is all said and done, I want this to be more of a stock look, and of course with silver and black, it's going to be more of a stock look than having some color in there. This push lock, I want to try to convert this stuff over to push lock, pretty much clean all this up, make it look better. I'm actually thinking about putting that intake manifold on that I made for the race car to see. It has a much larger throttle body than this Geostorm one, although the Geostorm one is large comparatively to the stock one from the S-Series. So yeah, I'll get more into that later. I just wanted to show the result on this. Of course, the downpipe is coated, covered and coated as well. All right, so I chose to do this quote unquote before or while I do the unit chip install. That was supposed to be up next, but I took it to the track. Man, it ran like 14, high 14. Very disappointed in that. I was expecting a lot more. Here was my problem. The stock rev limiter, as you all know, sits there and bump, 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 bump at around 4,000, 4,200. The track was pretty well prepped. It was for an event for IFO and something Outlaws or something, but the track was pretty sticky. So I couldn't rev over the stock rev limiter. Plus, I don't have two-step or launch, basically, to where I can build boost at the stop off with just sitting there. So as soon as I let off the clutch, brrr, of course the track is sticky as hell. These are actually drag radial type tires. So by the time this thing got going, got up in its RPM band, man, it was flying. I thought, matter of fact, so much so it deceived me, because I said, man, that felt pretty strong. You know, yes, I bopped out of the hole, but man, I sure should have. No. So I thought, okay, with the unit chip, I'll be able to go in, I'll be able to up the rev limiter, basically for my two-step, and launch at a higher RPM, build boost, obviously, at that point. Got to be careful, obviously. I don't have race axles on here, and first time I do it, maybe the last time I'm able to do it with those axles. I'm not about to buy any or invest in any one-off axles. It ain't going to happen. So whatever I get, but I was disappointed. I said, well, you know what? It's hot. It's the summertime anyway. I've been wanting to do these other upgrades. There's a bunch of stuff that I want to. This was, the way I look at this, it was beta version, okay? Make it fit, run the piping, put the turbo back there, see if it does, see how it does. And we saw that the turbo that I had was just taking too long to get up because it was one of those clip turbos, the turbine wheel. We fixed that. I'm happy with the way power delivery comes on now. The issue is obviously now, I mean, you should see this thing. When I'm on the freeway, it wants to just keep on going, but guess what? Boo, there kicks in the speed limiter. So I'm limited on a bunch of stuff, and I said, you know what? I want to bring it down. I want to do the header wrap. I want to put the exhaust pipe through the center tunnel up higher so I don't have any clearance issues. I want to run this thing a little bit lower profile, and I can do that once I fix my clearance issue. I want to move the resonators that I have in this pipe here. I want to take those out and just run straight pipes there, but I want to move the resonators up further in, more toward the center of the car, so I still have the sound deadening, because with the resonators here, or the mufflers, however you want to look at it, I'm not hearing that turbo whistle like I wanted. That was a real thing for me. So I'm going to cut these out, put straight pipes here, move these together, both of them, and I'm going to put them in the center of the car. That way I'll get my sound deadening way ahead of where the turbo is at. Plus, when I do this, I'm going to run larger pipes to these, because you can see it pinched down right there. I'm going to run larger diameter pipe to give that more of an echo sound, and I think the turbo sound is going to come out a lot better that way. I do hear it right now, but it's not like I want it. So we removed front bumper. We're installing our new oil cooler. We had a tube and fin type. The fins were pretty chewed up. I didn't think it was doing as good a job. It's been on there since, I think it's the one I have had since 1995. So replacing it with one of these plate and fin types. They're 30 row. I've got a 19 row. It seemed kind of tiny to me. So I've got a 30 row, and I've run ahead and drilled for the brackets and got it coming. I'm thinking about going back to the original intercooler that I had before, maybe even one thicker instead of just the 2 inches, maybe 3 inches, get a little bit thicker. This one, if you remember, it ended up allowing more air through to the engine, so my engine temps went down about 10-15 degrees, but my boost temps went up comparable. So I want lower boost temps. Now I'm installing this engine oil cooler. I should be able to get lower engine temperatures for the most part. It's always going to, the thermostat's always going to do its deal and, you know, open and regulate that. But I'm going to have fan control with the unit chip, and I can turn the fans on sooner. But I did want cooler oil than what I believe I have now, thus the change. This is the old type that we had. You can see it's a 4-pass tube type. And now this is the plate type. Now it looks massive sitting here. See my hand? It's not very big. This is the 19 row. I've got a 30 row, which would be twice as big as this. So I figured I'd need the extra cooling. It is a bit deeper as far as the tube and fin, so I kind of saw it in my mind about, you know, basically squashing down that tube that was running through with the 4-pass. How much space would I have on it? And I'm thinking this one, even this one, be more, but I wanted to just make sure, and if I'm going to go through the effort, go ahead and get cooling more so than I need. And of course, this is what I went with. Again, this is the 19, and see, it's not, there's my thumb, it's not that thick even as well, but still, the more rows ought to help out. They have these, it's AN, they've got these cool 6 and AN adapters depending on what type you have. But anyway. Alright, so here it is mounted. You can see through here, it comes with 10-10 AN fittings, but it has adapters that go from 10 to 8 and 10 to 6, so it just depends on which lines you're running. I switched to the -8. That's the fittings that I had, and that's large enough. And of course, much larger, you've got these big 10 AN lines running back and forth, and it just takes up a lot of room, more so than what's actually needed. But you can see it's a fairly good size on this one. The other one was about this far, something like that. So it's longer. I've got it mounted directly to this cross beam here. Cut out some half moon reliefs for the actual AN fittings, and the little yellow caps, let's just keep dusting stuff out till I get the new black braided -8 lines to get going. I'm just going to reuse the old fittings that I had on there, save money. But anyway, that's where I got it, and it should work fine. Alright, it's all plumbed up. Got the fittings ran inside there. Let's see if focus. One on that side, one on that side. This side's in, that side's out. I've already verified it is dropping temp on that side. So, success. So this one is just to show the distance. Before, the tube and thin one I had hanging right on the face of the condenser here. I don't like those too much. They've got those zip tie kind of securing kits. It just puts a lot of weight and vibration and stuff, possible vibration. That one was relatively light compared to this one, but still, it's not a good idea to have that, you know, slashing through your fins and resting on your tubes in there, or your plates. So as you can see, it's quite far away now. It's not mounted directly to it like the other one was. And then we got lots of distance between that, the condenser, and the radiator. And then the distance between the oil cooler now is pretty good as well, in the intercooler. So lots of room. It only hangs like a ½ inch lower than the intercooler does. And so, yeah, I like it. The only thing I don't like is if you hit this, which simulates engine, you know, hitting a pothole. See how it wobbles? The holes up there, the one that's right here at the back, this one right here is just to mount this bracket to this oil cooler, whereas that one goes through that area right there. That's the only room I had to do it with. Cut my reliefs up there for the AN fittings. So down here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to bracket from this end over here to this hole here. It's like an extra, I guess, if you wanted to mount it to where the inlet of the intercooler was up the top, you could mount it that way, upside down, or the opposite way up, whatever. So I'm going to use a bracket from there to there, and there's one over here on this side as well, and it ought to stabilize it up pretty well. But yeah, just showing a lot of room now, and this should be a really efficient cooler. Yep. The other thing I was thinking of doing was basically getting a wider intercooler, like from here to here, maybe extend it out a ½ inch or so. I've got plenty of room to do that. I'll still be able, I could come out actually an inch if I wanted to, and it would still have about a ½ inch or more clearance from the intercooler to the oil cooler. So I think this one is 2 inch thereabouts. So maybe a 2½ inch. That would be sufficient, I think. Just give me a little more volume for cooling. So the way eBay and Amazon intercoolers are, they're relatively cheap to kind of play around and see what you'd like to do. But anyway, that's about it on that. Okay, as usual, pardon the fan noise, but I'm going to go ahead and change the intercooler where I'm at it. This one here, remember the intercooler I had on before this one, same size. I think this one overall size was 27 by, let's go end to end here. Yeah, so we're just going with hard numbers. 27 by 7. And the thickness, I know for a fact, is 2.5. Or what they listed it as 2.5. And don't forget, JDM Sport. But anyway, yes, about 2 1/4, right? So I've noticed on all these measurements and stuff, they tend to be off by quite a bit, and there's no rhyme or reason why it's like that. So I wanted something a little bit bigger, taller. I wanted the same width though, and just a little bit deeper. I do like this one as opposed to the last one, because it does have these like beveled, or I guess angular tubings, so that you know, it shoots air into there, grabs it and pull like Venturi's into here, rather than just being flat faced. I can't say if it helps or not. I will say that the last intercooler that I got was an exact size duplicate of this one, and if we remember, that one cooled the air better going into the engine, but my engine temps were up a little bit. When I put this on, it flipped. Engine temps went down a little bit, but then intake temps went up. So it was allowing more cooling air to go through here, but it wasn't cooling it as well as it went through. And I did replace, it wasn't like I replaced the intercooler in December and then did it again in July. So I did it real close to where I could tell if there was a difference or not, and that's what I found. So in my estimation, this one was good enough for 10 pounds, 12 pounds, and probably not even this size. Probably something smaller, you could have got away with it. With it being a full front intercooler, air rushing across, you're getting if it's air to air, then you're getting your best there. So I know on that Mitsubishi side mount one that I did, the core was about from about here to here. So it wasn't that big, and Mitsubishi engineers at the time figured, okay, well that's good enough to cool 10 to 12 psi, which that in Mitsubishi Eclipses, the turbos ran stock. However, as we all know, they go small as they can and just do what they have to, because there's the numbers crunchers that pull engineering. They hold the engineers back and tell them what they can and can't do because there's money involved. So is upgrading an intercooler size always a good idea? You already know the answer to that. Yes. You can go too big, although some people argue that that's not a real issue. But I have to imagine that the amount of time it takes to fill an intercooler that's this big compared to one that's 2 or 3 times its size, there's got to be some pressure drop, and they've done studies where they've checked pressure drop from inlet to outlet, and there was a 1 or 2 psi pressure drop. But for my purposes, I'm not worrying about it. So what I did is I got one a little bit longer, a little bit thicker, a little bit taller. Same length, a little bit thicker, a little bit taller. So this is the best way I can rig it up to show you. You can see how it's taller, right? From this to this. The length is the same from there to there. It's the same length, and it is thicker, or wider, I should say. The width here compared to the width here. The wider it is here, the longer it slows down. The air coming through gives it a chance to pull more heat away. But of course, when you do that, you stymie the air that's trying to get through to 3 different coolers in this case. One is the engine oil cooler that we just put on. 2 is the condenser that's behind the cooler. And of course, arguably the most important one would be your radiator, keeping your engine cool, which is just behind the condenser there. So the thicker this is, or the wider it is, of course, whatever's behind it is going to be blocked getting air. It's reduced, but as I showed you earlier when I mounted the oil cooler, there's enough distance in between each cooler to kind of give it some kind of behind dispersion, ability to kind of, they're not stacked right close to each other, one after another. So, because yes, air is coming through here, through these fins right here, and your boost is coming through this way. So as this air goes through here, it pulls heat off the air that's going this way. Well, that's how all of them work. The condenser and everything, they're that same way. Some people will buy intercoolers or any kind of cooler, mostly like oil coolers, and they'll have the tubes going north and south. But they've shown those don't cool as well because gravity feed is helping bring it down, and it just rushes through too quick. There's no what they call residence time. Okay, so you want the oil to stay in here for a minute, let heat be pulled off of it before it leaves. This one is just another Chinese knockoff. I believe I've seen a company called EM USA. I don't know if this is the same company because it looks like they went to lengths to not make this an M. so I don't know if they're whatever, but it's Chinese. So, what are we going to do? One other note is whenever you get these, make sure you rinse them out, wash them out. The machining process, I'm sure the quality control that these things don't go through will leave behind a bunch of junk in there. And you always just want to wash some medium through there, maybe some solvent, something that dries quick, just to make sure that there's nothing left inside there. Now whether or not this is going to leak or not, we won't know. If we try to trace down a boost leak after the fact and we check all of our known, we know that we've only disconnected here and here. So if we're losing boost all of a sudden in a large amount, It could be coming from the side here. Of course, then you'll take some soapy water, spray it all over here, and see if you can find a leak. You may be able, depending on where the leak is, you may be able to go to a TIG welder and he can just patch the hole. It just depends. But I got this one for $112. And now, in terms of the boost handling, I'm pretty sure that for the amount of boost that I'm going to run, 17 to 20 pounds, I think I've made that fairly clear. That's it. That's all I'm looking to do. If somebody whips my butt going 20 pounds, it'll be a fun butt whooping. So this is as far as I want to take the intercooler, because on a lot of these race cars, if you've seen some of them that have like the front mount weight plate, they'll actually put a weight plate extension that comes out up underneath. They'll rest their coolers and they'll rest their intercooler here. Sometimes I've seen videos where those the width of those things are a good 5-7 inches. So that's no longer a street car, right? So we're not going there. That's not the purpose of this car. It's a street car. It's a fun car. All right, so new intercooler's on. Looks a bit bigger. Just running it through. Yeah, I like it. I want to show you what I did with the prop rod here. I like the fact on the Hondas how the hoods can go almost vertical when they're up. I just got a 2003 Civic Coupe LX, and there's two rectangular holes. There's one here and there's another one down here somewhere, so that you can use the first one or you can put it down the second one to get more headroom. And I like that, especially when you're working on this side of the car. This hood sets down so low, it really bothers me. So what I did was I took a section, I forgot to measure this, but you can measure it yourself. Measure the outside diameter, and you can order a tube online. This is aluminum tube, and I drilled holes in here, and I ended up putting some roll pins in there, and you can see I increased the length of the prop rod from here down to here, so quite a bit of difference. And so now the hood does set much further up, whereas before it was coming down probably about right there. I mean, it's much further up, and I didn't want to do the little, what you can do to get even higher than this is you can put some washers underneath these bolts here, and it'll prop it up a little bit from the fender. You see a lot of the Hondas doing that. I don't care for that look. So this is enough for me. It got enough up out of my way. But that's all you got to do is just cut the rod about right here. Put this rod here, pretty much only sticks down in here about that far. It's not very far at all. And then this extends it. So yeah, that worked pretty good. So new lug nuts, because I had to break those others off. I have yet to find the wheel lock. Who knows where it went, but so as I had mentioned, the color of the car, it's going to be that copperish, kind of orangish that you see on current Nissans right now. And NRG, and this is something I think is important for people to know, there's tons of aluminum lug nuts out there. My understanding, the ones I pulled off of my car were steel. And so you read about stuff, it looks like steel is the way to go rather than aluminum. And they're safer, they last longer. I don't want any trouble out on the road, and so wheel coming off and that kind of thing, especially if you're going to be a high performance, once I get the unit chip on there, my speed limiter is removed, I can go up and take advantage of all the RPM and the boost and all that. So I want good lug nuts. Now I'm not NRG, I don't know if they're any better than anybody else. I looked at NRG and there was one other company, I forget their name, but there's a bunch of them out there, obviously, different designs, different things. So this is basically, it can be an open end lug nut, so if you're going to run longer studs, they'll go through here. And what you do is you take out this center cap, And they provide you with this tool. Get this thing out of here. It's plastic, and so it's designed, if you see, the almost like the a rook of a chess set, but that goes in and interfaces on here, and you unscrew it. There's a rubber O-ring seal in here, and that seal is supposed to keep like water out and stuff like that. It has this one, when you have that out, you can see it passes right through. So if you're going to run longer studs for, I don't know, drag type wheels or something like that, just for safety, then this would be a good option. So when you're not, if you don't have them, yeah, I'd recommend putting these in, because water can get up inside here, and you got steel studs with steel lug nuts. It might rust them inside. So now this is steel. This cap on here, this beveled portion, it's aluminum on here. So I don't know what to think about that. I would just say make sure you torque your wheels to the proper spec on it, and just check them often. But so there's that. There's this here. Now, since the color is going to be that orangish copper, and this color on the lug nuts will be the only thing visible, I had originally wanted to go for all orange, because it's going to contrast against the bronze of the wheels that I'm going to have powder coated. So, but I'm still going to bronze them, but this black will go good when I paint the top of this car black. Then it'll kind of, it'll kind of like, colors will kind of bounce off each other and kind of blend in and stuff like that. So I'm going to leave these black. These I'm going to actually paint. I got a can of this spray paint, Duplicolor, made specifically for wheels, which I don't know if that matters or not. But I'm going to obviously take the O-ring off. I'm going to primer them, and then I'm going to paint them with that color. And so that'll be the lug nut side of it. I got one locking lug per wheel, and they give you the key, and they also supply this socket to go on the end of this thing. And then the other ones are more of a regular nature lug nut. So same end on it, same way to get it out, but this one doesn't have the splines on it like that one does. So those are the lug nuts I'm going with. If you want these two, of course, they offer them in red, blue, silver, that one that is like the chameleon look. It's all the different stuff, but that's the part number. And of course, again, it's NRG. I do suffer brake fade quite a bit, so I'm going to use Hawk racing pads. There's not much to that. Just they come in here. There's no hardware or anything like that, so if you're going to mess with your hardware, just go and order some regular hardware from a parts store. It's pretty cheap. But we're going to go with Hawk racing pads. And the part number for the Saturn S series for pretty much every year is this right here. I usually spell it out in case there's a video issue or something like that, but I think it's pretty clear. I'm also using the Goodrich steel brake lines. This has 4 brake lines in it. Mine does not have the rear disc yet, and I have yet to go back there and look to see if this would actually work back there with the drum brakes. I doubt it. I don't know. We'll see. So the part number for this one is 54002. I do have the slotted and drilled rotors here. Now, I measured these. They've been here a long time, but I did measure the width of them, and I can machine them down. And you can machine these. A lot of people think you can't. You just have to, whoever's going to machine them for you, you have to let them know they need to set it to the lowest speed, okay? Now, as far as brakes go, you can see my brake calipers through my wheels, so I am going to take these off with the bracket, and I am going to paint these that copperish, goldish color. Again, it's going to be a contrast. It'll actually help match or blend in the color of the tip of the lug nut that I told you about with the color of the paint. And then the black accent again for the top. But I'm going to take these off and do them right. A lot of people kind of do them cheaply. They don't even really clean them that well. They just spray them here on the car. They don't last. So you have to use like a high temp paint, because these brakes do get hot, obviously. Any brakes do. And so just done right, they'll look good. But that's pretty much going to be the extent of that as far as brakes go. Curing the brake calipers, 200 degrees for an hour. And I'm actually shocked there's not tons of fumes up in here. Mom's gonna be pissed if I was. Anyway, had to cure it. It says after you're done, cure it for an hour at 200 degrees. So there you go. Now they say that you can cure it on the car, but brakes get, I don't know, 300, 400 degrees. So I think this slow cure process is going to be better. Plus, these things don't get oil and chemical resistant until they do cure after you've painted them. So it's important to do it. I guess you've got an oven and your wife's off from work and you're off and you can sneak it in and get it done. Sure, why not? Fresh baked calipers. Now, I could have went all out and I could have sanded the hell out of them, got them super baby butt smooth, you know, and maybe they'd look different or something like that. But you know what? Yeah, I only go so far with this look good kind of crap. I mean, I did clean them, washed them, sanded them down, hit them with a like a wire brush on my air tool, and just got them all cleaned up pretty well. Primed them 3 times, coated them 3 times, clear coated them 3 times, and baked them. So that's enough. That's about as much as I'm doing. Plus, through these wheels, you're not going to be able to see a whole lot, but just enough to kind of clean them up and stuff. It is something that I've been wanting to do for a long time. Probably one of the only things I like to spruce stuff up. But another reason is when I do those lug nuts, the black of the lug nut with the black of the top here, contrasted with the tips of the lug nuts, this same color here, and of course the color of the car. All right, so calipers, they're on. Racing brake pads, those are the Hawk brake pads. Just turn these rotors. Again, remember, turning the rotors, if you do have drilled and slotted rotors, you can turn them. Of course, you're still going to want to measure the thickness, right, to see if they can do it. These have never been turned before, so I did turn them. You have to set your machine on the slowest setting. Now, there's usually on most the machine devices, there's a panel on top that you lift up, and inside there is a series of pulleys and belts, and it's kind of like a supercharger where you want to turn more boost. You might go with a smaller pulley so that it spins faster. That's all you do, is you move the belt over, and it cut them flawlessly. They did a good job. And so yeah, make sure you do that. Of course, these are going to have to be bedded in. I've got the Goodridge stainless brake lines on. I felt like I needed those. This thing's got 170 something thousand miles on it. Those are the original brake hoses, so testament to Saturn, or I don't know, brake hoses in general. But anyway, so I got that on. That's pretty much it. That's what they're going to look like. They're all right. I mean, obviously, to do them probably 100%, I would have wanted to grind off these letterings and stuff like that, and maybe sand down that. But again, this is going to ride on the inside barrel of the wheel. You're not going to see it anyway, so you're pretty much just going to see that much. And since it's not fully covered and all this stuff like a Brembo or something like that would be, you know, okay, that's all it is. It's just to add a little bit of pop to the deal. Again, I'm not a showman, but I'd always wanted to do that, and so hopefully they last a while. What's going to suck is if a caliper sticks over a very short period of time, I got to do it all over again with the other caliper. But anyway, that's it.